Hi there, I'm Colin, and this is a Ryobi 1600 watt plunge router. It's nothing special, in fact it's quite inexpensive to buy, but recently I needed a router quickly to do a simple job and saw this in the hardware store and thought, for $149, can't go past it. Especially since it was advertising a soft start motor, which I think is one of the most important features of a router. But in this video, we're going to have a look at the depth gauge, because I did have a question coming through saying, those numbers on the gauge don't look like they make any sense. So let's see if we can create a cut of a specified depth easily using this gauge. And to do that, I'm going to use this router bit here, which is a 1/2 inch rabbiting bit, which gives me a nice flat surface to drop down onto a horizontal surface so that I can create a 0 point. And then we'll just see exactly how accurate this gauge is. And I can tell you now, it's not that, well, it's pretty plasticky and not that great. But let's see if we can get it to work. Install the router bit, plunge to 0, and lock in position. I'm going to set a depth of cut of 10 millimeters. And to do that, it's always nice to start on your depth gauge here with a round number. Now at the moment, it's sitting at around about 73 or something like that, or 7.3 centimeters. Now I could try and fine adjust that using the fine adjust dial up the top, but if I move the step gauge around 1 notch like this, and then move my dial back down, it's actually sitting pretty close to 7. Now you can see here that there's quite a lot of play in the step gauge, and I have a feeling that that's going to be a problem. So how about I keep a bit of tension on and then dial in using the fine adjust and get it as close as I can to 7. And then from that point, I'll then lift up another 10 and then lock the depth gauge. Now that's created a distance between the bottom of the gauge and the top of the step gauge of 10 millimeters, so that when I plunge the router down, the router bit will come out another 10 millimeters and hopefully give us a 10 mil cut. Let's see how that works. So how did we go? That looks pretty close. 10 point something, maybe 10.2, 10.3. Let's check with the vernier calipers. Yep, 10.3. So I need to move this 0.3 of a millimeter. The question is, can I trust the fine adjustment on the depth gauge? Let's see. The depth of cut is currently 0.3 millimeters too deep. So I need to move the depth gauge down another 0.3, which will move the cutter back up 0.3. So to create a bit of space, I'll first move the step gauge out of the way to give myself a bit of room to move. Up here we're on 0.38, so now I have to wind that out to 0.68, which is right here. And then I can no longer move the step gauge back, and that's because the router cutter is too deep. So that all looks like it's working out. So now all I need to do is retract the router up, so unlock it. And then I'll re-plunge that down when I'm ready to go. And of course I need to move the step gauge back to where it was before I plunge, otherwise that adjustment won't work. That's the second cut done, and you can see here on the right that there's a little ridge, which means that this cut over here on the right hand side is not as deep as the first cut. This one here was 10.3 millimeters deep. This one here should be slightly less. Let's measure that and see what it comes out to. I can't quite read that from here, so I'll have to get a bit closer. And the good news is, that's right on 10 millimeters. Let's check it with the vernier calipers as well, just to be sure. Yep, that's 10 millimeters. I'd be pretty happy with that. So can you make accurate depth cuts with the Ryobi 1600 watt router? The answer is yes, you can, but it comes with caveats. And that's because the depth gauge, well, it kind of works, but it's not the most refined piece of equipment you'll ever use. And this stepper gauge down here is, well, it's wobbly and just downright irritating. But you can get it to work within about 0.5 millimeter accuracy the first time around, and then you'll just need to make some manual adjustments using the equally dodgy fine adjust and lots of test cuts, hopefully not too many test cuts. But let's remember this is a $149 router. And whilst I've still got your attention, I'll just point out one more thing. The dust extraction on the back, the dust port, actually works very well. Just be very careful with it because it's made of very brittle plastic. But once it's all connected and screwed into the router and connected up to your shop vac, I was actually surprised at how well this works. So I hope you've got value out of that. If you have, it'd be great if you could like and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.